This is it. Please ready to order the May 20th, 2025 meeting of the Manchester-Essex Regional School District School Committee at 6:03 p.m.
Oh, good. You made it.
Just in time. We will start our meeting with public comment. We ask that you state your name, address, and please limit your comments to 2 minutes. If you are online and would like to make a public comment, please put your name and address in the comments. Chat. Seeing no one online, is there anyone in person who would like to make a public comment?
Yes, please. I will read this as quickly as I can. All right, my name is Jennifer Michaud. I've been a social studies teacher at MERHS for 15 years. I'm here tonight for the third time this year to discuss the negative impacts of a high school social studies teacher position being cut as a result of approving the fiscal year 26 budget. When the fiscal year 26 budget was first proposed to the school committee, it identified a reallocation of a high school teaching position to Memorial School. All of the budget documents reference this reallocation without making it clear to the committee and the public that this is an actual cut of a high school teacher. The term level services and carry forward have been used in context of the proposed budget, well, now approved budget, implying that there would be no impact to students when a cut in the high school impacted course availability was to be made. The specific high school position to be cut was not identified in the document shared with the public. At the February 4th budget hearing, I spoke about how I believed that this cut would be from the high school social studies department. I believed this because there are 2 departments at the high school with 6 members, and I had a feeling the cut would be made solely based on that factor without looking at the logistics of what the cut would mean for students. I warned the committee that this cut would have a negative impact on course offerings and class sizes, and in turn, the quality of education our students receive. I also mentioned that a social studies position was cut in the fiscal year 25 budget, meaning that the department would lose 10 sections of course offerings for students over 2 years if the cut did come from the social studies department. By the April 1st school committee meeting, the high school teacher being cut had been notified their position would not be available next year if the budget was approved by the towns. And as I predicted, the cut was from the social studies department. I informed the committee of the high interest in social studies courses that the department currently does not have the staff to fill and how eliminating a position from our department would compound the already existing issue. I presented the harms to students of reducing access to both required and elective social studies courses and the overcrowded classrooms this would create, ultimately undermining educational quality and the district's mission to prepare informed, engaged citizens. I emphasized the importance of elective courses to our students' schedules. I had some time since the last meeting to dig more deeply into the data to show the need for this position to remain. Student requests for social studies electives grew 32.31% from this school year to next school year. At the same time, enrollment could decrease 4.56%. There will be 15 less students in the high school next year based on current enrollment numbers. Students want to fill their schedules with social studies electives. This year, 303 students requested social studies electives, and at max, only 200 will be enrolled. 103 students will not be able to take a class they want to take. 103 students is the equivalent of 1 teacher. I looked at enrollment in social studies elective classes for the class of 2025 because I was curious how many social studies electives the students ended up taking while at MERHS. Of the 109 graduating seniors who physically attend MERHS, only 7 have not taken a social studies elective their junior or senior year, which is when student schedules have the most room for electives. 102 out of 107 have. That's 93.6% of the class of 2025. Of these 109 students, 60% took 1, 2, or 3 social studies electives their junior year, and 79% took 1, 2, or 3 electives their senior year. None of these elective classes are a semester in length. They are all full year. On top of the 86 seniors taking electives this year, 63 of the 89 juniors, 71% of their grade, are also taking 1, 2, or 3 social studies electives. The numbers make it clear that students at MERHS want to take elective classes in the social studies. Social studies electives teach analytical thinking skills, empathy, and the ability to understand diverse perspectives. They prepare students to become informed, thoughtful, and engaged members of society. There have been a lot of public statements made here the last few months by members of the class of 2025 about the budget and override. A senior even spoke at Essex town meeting about the override. All of these students have taken more than 1 social studies elective during their education here at MERHS, proof that these classes and the ability to enroll in them are creating graduates who have the skills, knowledge, and competence to participate in our democracy. As their AP US Government and Politics teacher, I was especially proud. If a social studies teaching position is cut, future MERHS students will not have the same opportunities the class of 2025 did to develop these skills. Hopefully you can understand the multitude of reasons why cutting this position is an error. I've attempted to bring them to your attention with each public comment I made. Once you examine the data, you can see that making a cut to a high school department solely based on how many teachers are in the department is foolish. The high school schedule and desires of students reflects the need for this position to remain, and I feel like I've clearly explained the issues with cutting this position each time I've stood in front of this body. Part of your agenda this evening is to decide whether or not to take school choice students into the district next year. I heard that you have received many emails encouraging you to do so. I also know that at the March 18th school committee meeting, you decided as a body that you and you alone would decide where any potential school choice revenue is appropriated. I am asking that the committee approve school choice students into the district for the coming school year and to earmark the corresponding funds to keep the social studies position for the next school year. You have the power to use this revenue for what is best for students. Thank you.
Thanks, Jen. Miss.
And they all call me Miss Mulner. You can call me Jen.
All right, I don't see anybody else in person. I don't see anyone else online, so we are closing public comments. We can close the chat. Moving on to the chairperson's report. Chris is not here, so you get my report instead. The budget passed both town meetings and passed at the ballot in Essex last week. So that was the final step in securing our approved budget for fiscal year 26, which is great news. Looking forward to thinking about how our district can grow and use the resources available moving ahead. All right, consent agenda. We have vouchers 1073 through 1075. We have the May 5th minutes, and we have an out-of-state travel request from the high school. Did anybody have any questions about those? No. I just had one, and actually, Maria, I meant to send this to you in an email and I forgot, so I apologize. It says that we adjourned at the same time that we reconvened on the minutes. I know it was a really quick meeting, but it wasn't that quick. But barring that, I will take a motion to accept the consent agenda.
So moved.
Second? Second. All in favor? Right, that's unanimous. And that oh, you know what? The out-of-state travel request is not from the high school, it's from the middle school. Everybody's still okay with that. Does anyone have any more questions? All right. Subcommittee reports, facilities. I guess that's you, John. Truth is not here.
Just still working the process with the OPM. They're it's the, I guess the next step is picking the designer. And, we plan to have that selected by summertime-ish.
Yep, August.
August. There we'll just work on putting together scope. That includes identifying sites in Essex and.
So just for anybody who's been following the process, there is still not a confirmed site or a confirmed model
That's correct.
or a confirmed new building versus.
We're still early stages. We've only had one meeting so far with the OPM.
John, remind us when some of those decisions, is there a timeline for when some of that will be made?
So the designer will be selected by August or so, and then from there, Pam, help me out with this, because I don't have the timeline in front of me, but.
Yep, so we're right now, we issued, and I'm gonna answer that question. So we issued a request for services for designers. We will be meeting on the 24th of June and then the 22nd of July. The 24th of June is kind of a background, how the whole process works, overview meeting conducted by the project manager for the full building committee. It'll be publicized and anyone can come. We'll talk a little bit about timelines in general then. On the 22nd, we'll meet to talk about any issues or concerns or likes with the proposals that come in. And we have 2 meetings with MSBA, one on the 15th of July and the 29th of July, to go through the process with them. So with the designer, the MSBA actually assigns us a designer from the proposals received. So that's the process we'll work through in July. By August, our goal is to have, just like we did with the project manager, execute a contract, have them on board. That's when the work actually begins for starting to take steps toward fulfilling the scope of the feasibility study. So what we'll see in the fall are community meetings, gathering input on the wants and needs, but also the designer going through the identified properties in Essex and the checklist that's in our feasibility study for looking at grade level configuration options. That'll all start probably full tilt in September. So long answer. but-
And do you, at this point, know when you would expect them to have a recommendation?
We'd just be guessing. I think it depends. I think the goal is for them to work through things that are more research-based and try to eliminate anything like looking at the memorial school and what we know about it. So to move the timeline along, Doran Whittier is gathering all of the information it can. So when the designer comes on, there is a list of sites available in Essex, and there is all the background information on memorial, like whether or not it was appropriately built to sustain adding a 3rd level, or whether or not, so
Yeah.
some of that background work. But that's what the designer does. That's kind of their main piece. So it's exciting. 2 years feels like a long time, but it's gonna go in the blink of an eye. And there'll be a lot of community meetings next year to just look at different iterations and taking place. So exciting.
Great. It says that the policy committee has a report, but we do not. We did not end up meeting. And so we're to Pam for the superintendent report.
We did.
I'm so sorry.
Just because Stella's sitting there, I'm like,
Don't ever let grown-ups teach you to be so polite that you don't interrupt them. To say, excuse me. Student report, thank you.
I actually don't really have I mean, I'm filling in for Maggie tonight, because I'm technically retired, I'm actually no longer in school. So I don't really have much.
The alum report.
So yes, but I guess I would just like to say from the student body, a huge thank you to all the voters who showed up in Essex to pass the override. And anyone else who showed up to any of the town meetings and things like that. Lord, just huge thank you from the student body. That's pretty much all I have to say.
Awesome, and thank you. It's been great having you. I'll miss you.
Yeah, and thank you to everyone here for listening to me talk all year. It's been a really wonderful experience.
That's part of the meetings.
Yeah.
For sure.
Thanks, Stella.
Thank you.
And we cannot congratulate Stella.
We can congratulate Stella.
Next steps. Exciting.
Me? I'm going to continue with the theme of thank you and gratitude. This is just, you probably already received this in your email. There'll be a version of that goes into the cricket. It's just a general thank you to the community for any little bit that you did in support of us being able to successfully get the budget through this year. So thank you to everyone at this table for all the extra work that you put into it, to the students, to the staff. We have Essex 2025 and the support MERSD groups that were out there. And then we had people just not necessarily affiliated with any group who were holding signs, sharing emails and answering questions. So it truly was a community effort. It's really exciting for us to be at a stage right now where the decision's made and we are full force preparing for next year. I mean, we were ready. We had those hiring postings up the next day. So that's, everything is in motion. And I think the forward motion feels really good and has lifted a lot of spirits in the district. So thank you for everybody for all that you did to make that happen. We will hopefully make next year an exciting year. So in continuing with the good news, and long discussions and a lot of compromise and sacrifice, we were able to get to an alignment agreement between the two schedules at the middle school and the high school. We've agreed on a one-year pilot. The one big thing that it's going to let us do is it's going to allow us to share a world language teacher between the two levels. So you will see grade 6 world language reinstated next year. That's going to help pave the way now for us to keep working backward and look at a real timetable for re-implementing elementary world language. So just some
Is that
basic
being reinstated as a core class or an exploratory?
exploratory as it was before. There could be some discussion about whether it should or could become a core class. I think there are pros and cons to each. But I think that's more of a curriculum discussion than a financial discussion at this point. So just some quick basics on the schedule because hopefully, for students, the differences are pretty minor. What they were able to retain are some of the things that were concerned with this version of the schedule that was brought forward last year. So teaming and U block are still, there is no change to what we would call the middle school concept or the middle school way of doing things. It moves to a 7-day rotating schedule. And essentially that phrase, the coordinated class time structure. So basically all of the blocks align, but business is done as it has been done at the middle school and the high school, with the major exception that we are looking at a common lunch. As it stands now, 6th and 7th grade will be a combined first lunch, and then it will be an 8 and lower high school if at all possible, and then a high school lunch in the 3rd lunch. So we did do that. I would say 13 years ago, we had combined lunches and it worked well. The students do ride the bus together. So we think with proper management, that should be able to go smoothly. Middle school will still have a meet 6 and they'll only drop 1 a day. And it'll be a consistent rotation. The way, and I really have to pat Julie on the back. She really kind of working at it. She was able to come up with some type of configuration that there's clearly going to be a little hand scheduling in it. The high school still does the 5 meetings a day with the drop 2. The drop 2 doesn't drop consistently, so it bounces around a little bit. But she's confident that there shouldn't be any long gaps between meetings and that the high school students can adapt to the inconsistent drop.
I'm sorry.
Yep.
Can you move the cursor
Yep.
so that we can see the,
It's on.
on the screen?
It's
I don't know.
already on
It's-
screen.
Maybe it's not your cursor. There you
Yeah.
go. Thank you.
Let me get back to what I was looking at. Okay.
So when you say the drop 2 doesn't drop, like right now you would drop A and B and then the next
Yeah,
day.
it could be A, B, D, E, C, F. But the whole thing rolls out. She will roll it out for the year.
And it will start this coming year?
Great.
Okay. So those are the major rotations. So we can now schedule a faculty member to be in both buildings, if necessary. So, like I said, immediate pro, the world language. I think there's been plenty of discussion over the years of what we could do with the music department, if they were able to work more smoothly between the two. So I think it's going to generate a lot of ideas and potentially allow us to look at some opportunities going forward. We get to study it this year. I'm sure we've missed something. So there is a commitment to continue to work with Mita to find any mistakes and kind of refine things as we go.
So thank you for working this through and continuing this on. It's a 1-year pilot, so what would you be looking at, or what would the staff be looking at the end of that 1 year to determine?
I don't think anybody's looking at anything specific other than to have a safety net in case it's not good.
Okay,
Or in case one of the two parties identifies something that's really problematic.
Okay.
So I think there's a scenario where works a lot better than we anticipated and it doesn't seem so different. I mean, it's a lift on the adults. It's a different app. So there's a scenario where it's just a lot of apprehension and we get into it and it works really well. There's a scenario where we get into it and we discover things that we didn't even anticipate and we're like, this doesn't work. We need something else.
I'm excited about it. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Did you block change?
No. And again, pat on the back to Julie and the team for finding something that met the biggest concerns of the people who came forward last year. And just a big thank you to those who, to everyone who's going to have to try it, whether it was their, whether it was their interest to do so or not. So we're looking forward to it. And we're looking forward to learning from it and seeing what other opportunities it brings up. I'm sure we'll be talking a lot about it throughout the year.
When are you gonna tell the students? Do they know?
I think they know. Did Miss
Stella hasn't been in the building.
I have not been in the.
We haven't sent an
would have heard about
communication
it.
out to parents yet, so this is fresh off of the beginning of this week, so I
Yeah.
think we need to get together and talk about how to frame it and put communications out to.
I was gonna say, to the best of
Parents
my
do.
knowledge, the student body does not know.
Right, I would say that.
And I think
Sure.
the trick is gonna be to announce that there's a change when there really is no change for the high school students.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I think as long as, I feel like as long as U-Block is like still there, I feel like the high school students.
Drop two is still there.
And drop two is
That
still
was-
there. I feel like the high school students, those are like the two main things, I feel like, that we really want to hit on to.
And I could be oversimplifying, and I'm not the person who's been, neck deep in all the details of it. But on the surface level, the major changes are, there's really no change to the high school schedule at all, other than your teachers could be teaching in, across the levels. The middle school was on a 6-day rotation, and now they're on a 7-day. But the way I've tried to explain it is, the way she set it up is that their 6-day rotation lives inside of the 7-day rotation, and she's manipulating the drops so it all lines up. So a lot of the discussion was around, in a real major stumbling block last year was, we had 6 lunches at one point, and that was consuming such a large mass of the schedule that trying to keep everything separate was eliminating a lot of possibilities. So, right now, I think the working theory is that we would do a split lunch for the 6th and 7th grade, where half would go out for recess before lunch and half would go out after lunch. And that's gonna be a heavy lift for the dean to manage, along with the lunch aides, but we'll get there. And I think everyone's committed to at least giving it a try and seeing, what comes of it. So enough on the schedule. We're excited. That was 2 big things, in a matter of a week that it seems like we worked on for a couple of years, and then finally, we had a path forward. So that's kind of adding to the energy and the excitement, that and being able to get out and post for the 14 vacancies that we currently have. And I just want to note that these are all positions that are currently occupied, and people are either moving on due to, mostly for one reason or another, to begin a new chapter of their lives, whether they're moving cross country because their spouse got a new job, or they're moving into retirement, or they're just looking for a change. These are the positions that are being vacated that we now have to hire for next year. I would just say it's 14 today. By the time I get to my desk tomorrow, it could be 16 because somebody else has had another life change. So this number will fluctuate, probably over the course of the summer. A lot of times we get late surprises as well. But when you start to see the postings, these are the positions that were never really part of any discussion about budget or reduction, just need to be replaced because people are moving on. So I don't know if I've shared in the past, but probably just a good reminder, our hiring process is standard across all buildings. We're always looking for a committee of mixed stakeholders, teachers, students at the high school level, parents at all levels, led by the principal. They're advisory to the principal, but we like to get a lot of input on people who will be working in our community. And then when they narrow down finalists, either the clear finalists or the 2 finalists are asked to come in or be observed remotely doing a lesson. So we get a sense of what they're like working with students. So excited for this to go. I'm going to say a word on the middle school principal. So that is posted as well. If you recall, the continuation of a dedicated middle school principal was contingent on the budget. We all started with yay, the budget passed. So now I'm out recruiting in both for long-term and short-term. We'll hope for next year is to get someone who has some experience to help us manage through while we're studying and thinking about what we want the future structure to look like. I think I heard in our discussions that that is still worth investigating and studying, even if we're not going to act quickly on it. I'll say what my concern has been. It's already very late in the hiring season, and I think it's a very difficult time to be hiring for these positions. So while I'm hopeful, I'm also a little, going to be a little concerned until we finally identify a person to come in. But my goal is to have somebody in place by July. And I have an update ready to go out to middle school families this week to kind of let them know what the game plan is. I'm not going into specific step detail like I sometimes do with the search process, because in my mind, the model is someone who is newly retired, who can come in and hit the ground running and help us manage and assess. I don't know that I'm going to be able to fulfill that. So if it gets more into having to go with someone who has extensive assistant principal experience, or someone who's making, sometimes people who are moving and coming in are willing to take a 1-year job until they, then I think I might go with a very modified version of a hiring committee to help me sort through who's in front of me. So a little bit open-ended, because I don't know what the candidate pool is going to be, but I'll keep everybody posted on that. And then finally, just, it's that time of year. There's no afternoon or evening that doesn't seem to have some type of celebration in it. Memorial Day activities are this Friday. It's the same schedule as it's been every year, with the exception that the middle high schools moved to the afternoon. So I will send this out to you, and if you plan on joining me, just let me know, or just show up. It's probably going to be raining, so I think we'll be inside at Memorial School. Academic and Athletic Awards Night is coming up for the high school on the 28th. Junior Senior Prom is on the 29th. They'll do their pickup right around 5, 6.
11. I think.
And it's going to be at Memorial, because the concert for the elementary school is here. So fun times. And then we start the whole moving on, kind of celebrating the graduations and moving on to the baccalaureate on the 5th graduation, and the ES middle school and Memorial School and middle school moving on. So middle school moving on, we'll talk a little bit about later. They've dislodged us from our typical Tuesday night, because their tradition is to have it the day before school lets out. So we're going to have to do some scheduling.
Can I make a brief comment about
Yep.
cycles?
Did I get something wrong?
No, not, gosh, I wouldn't notice if you did.
Okay.
But something to think about for calendars that I think nobody anticipated this year with a 2-week holiday break is that it means spring sport playoffs are directly conflicting with senior week. And as a parent of student athlete and a senior, it is a challenge that is worth reflecting on, I think, after we see how all this plays out, because it's going to put in jeopardy whether senior athletes can go on the rafting trip, whether they can go to the Red Sox game, and possibly some other things. So I think there's probably some ways that you could keep the 2-week break if that's what people choose to do, and think about kind of shifting some of the scheduling of senior week. But I think there's a lot of teams advancing to playoffs right now, so it's going to impact a lot of student athletes.
And graduation's late this year too.
Well, I think that's why it's late though, right? It's late because we came back later from Christmas break.
There's the rule where it has to be it has to be the first Friday of June. So it has to be within so many days of the end of the year. So the latest we could go was like a May 30-ish. There's a rule. I'm gonna go and look it up. 'Cause I can remember going through
It is
this with,
late.
when, a few years ago, and we had it the last day of May. And that was,
That like if
It
we
would get
move this
that was back
earlier,
then.
it'd be.
because it would typically be right around the 1st or the 3rd. So anyway, yes, the way the calendar played out, plus the 2 weeks.
Yeah, I
And
thought it
probably
was
the
a 2
two
weeks.
things coinciding.
Yeah.
So,
So,
okay,
what's what?
that's good. It's a good point, and I'm sure I'll talk to Candy about that.
I mean, Cammy's moving mountains to try to make this not impact, but I just think it's challenging.
And that's it, unless you have any other questions.
I have a question. One of the vacancy that you had in the last page was the accountant.
Yes.
And I think a few years ago, when we added a position, is to create a segregation of duty. So while the position is vacant, how are you gonna manage the segregation of duty for finances?
I will handle everything that the accountant would normally do, while it's vacant. And I have control over the entire general ledger, so I can do that. I can't touch the treasurer side of things, and I can never touch the treasurer side of things. So that's why we have the treasurer and myself, so we have to segregate those duties.
Right, but I think that, we can talk offline.
Yeah,
And the way it's set up right now, the position is titled financial analyst slash payroll, and I think, Michelle, you're gonna wanna move it to school.
yeah, after some discussions with our auditors, they recommend we have a designated accountant
Yeah.
per se,
sure.
because right now, I'm technically in charge of that role, but there's only so many things I can do at once.
Do you have the same concerns over hiring of the teachers that you do over hiring of the middle school principal?
Not yet. Allison Collins has been the only person who's mentioned she's a little concerned with the depth of the pool, particularly around, the team chair for the middle and high school. So I think there are some specialty positions.
They're tough to fill no matter what.
We still seem to pull strong pools for content area and elementary classroom teaching positions. But I'll keep you posted.
Thank you. It's all exciting. Forward.
It's
thinking.
so exciting. I mean, the excitement is that we sat in a little bit of a holding pattern, and, you know, when we got in on Tuesday, everybody was kind of like off to the races, and here we go. So, it's exciting.
All right, continued business. We have the fiscal year 26 budget and fiscal year 26 school choice. Are those two are those?
No, really, it was just to check in on the budget to see if anyone had any lingering questions, and to just recap, kind of, we ended with it's a level services budget. It included the reorganization of facilities, which is currently underway, going smoothly so far. It also included the reallocation of the two positions from the high school. One, we were able to address by splitting the position now between the middle and the high school. That's the world language position. And then the reduction of the social studies position for an additional classroom teacher position at the Memorial School. So that's been posted and we're underway there. And I just didn't know if anyone had any questions about, there were kind of a lot of versions and a lot of conversation. So everyone's squared away. We don't have to talk about it anymore. And we can go into school choice.
Yeah.
Question, so, when we approve the school choice, the additional revenue, that goes to the budget, what do we decide on the additional revenue? Where do we park it? And how do we utilize it? I guess my question is, will we be filling that operation person or the position to bring it back?
So we left that open on purpose. We had taken a vote that any savings from health insurance, we would return to the towns. And then any additional revenue from school choice, we reserved the discretion to use as we determined was best.
So will we determine next year?
I have a couple of thoughts and I can offer them and you guys can discuss. And in a way, it is kind of linked to school choice. So we've always taken in school choice kind of as a bucket. And when it comes in, no matter what, it goes as an offset to the overall budget because you have to show it on your line item. So it's never been associated with a thing, whether it's a one-time purchase or a position. It's really just always been as a way to generate a revenue line that offsets the assessment. What's been nagging at me a little bit is when we closed out the budget and put the middle school principal back in, we closed the gap by increasing our reserve usage from 500 to 600,000. So in my mind, if we land on taking school choice, and I am recommending we do move forward with school choice, to me, that would just be additional revenue that comes in to either offset or hopefully end us in the black for next year to start to go to work on the larger deficit we'll have. because we took a big chunk out of the reserves to make the budget work.
Yeah, and when the idea of using school choice revenue for any particular position, I guess I'd be interested in Michelle's view. I feel like, to me, there's a risk there of if a position were funded by a specific revenue source and that revenue source needs to be eliminated, but I don't think we've done that as far as I know in the past.
Right, it's not a direct funding, it's kind of an offset funding. We appropriate the positions within our overall budget, and then this is just a funding source of the overall budget, just like we use 400 or 500,000 towards, health insurance, reducing the health insurance assessment. So it wouldn't be funded per se directly from it, but it would help offset the overall budget and lessen the assessment to the communities. I mean, we could leave the additional funds just on hand, see how the year rolls out, and worst case scenario, it lands in school choice and we use it the following year as an additional offset.
So my recommendation is, if we're ready for school choice, is to move forward with it for next year, but I did revise my enrollment thinking. It brought the original idea of 20 seats down to 12. And focus totally on bringing in all of the sibling students that exist and not trying to push to 20. Mainly because I am thrilled right now. I don't want to start talking about FY 27 just yet, but we still have a challenge for next year. And we don't know how that challenge is going to be solved or what decisions we're going to make. So bringing in the extra 8 kids right now will be a little bit of a bump in revenue, but not bringing them in, I think, gives us a little bit more, a few more options in terms of where we might look at reorganizing or restructuring. And if we're just another flat go forward and we have the space, we can always bring in additional students next year. So a couple of the things, so what I'm looking at is the 12 sibling students. So that would be 1 at kindergarten at each school. Then 4th grade, 6th grade, 6 students, 7th grade, 1 student, and 8th grade, 2 students. Previously, I did not have the off transition year students in there. I didn't have grade 4, 7, and 8. I'm adding those in now. The families are here and part of our organization. They know what to expect. And we think it would be a comfortable transition for those families. As a reminder, why I wasn't looking at the 9th grade is because we already have 10 or 11 school choice students in there. Because we've been adding at the 6th grade, they're moving forward already carrying 10 and 11 students. If you did want to go above 12, that would be the place I would recommend them and just accept that we were going to creep up a little bit. But that is just my very straightforward recommendation. It yields us about $60,000 in additional revenue. There's room to add back next year. And I would say it sits basically in there as a revenue source to offset the added reserves that we put in. I can pull up those charts you're looking at. I think I'm on the wrong file.
Does anybody have clarifying questions?
Yes. So Pam, you and I spoke about this a little bit, but can you just remind us, because when we looked at school choice a couple years ago, we were trying to place students at much later grades to avoid the possibility of overcrowding issues at the elementary schools. And can you just remind us why we're now back to putting them in elementary school? Is that just based on student population?
Yes and no. We're doing maybe 4 students to 4 students at the elementary level. And the bulk of them are going into 6th grade. So I have this chart. Here's the chart that I'm looking for.
No, 4, well, 6 going into 6th and 4 going
Right,
into
so this
elementary grades.
is where we are right now. So on the left-hand side is our projected enrollment by grade level for next fall based on what we know now. the column that says current school choice at grade level shows you how many kids in that grade level are currently school choice. So if you work from the bottom up, ninth grade has 11 students, 8, 10, and 7th, 12 already, because we've been putting in students at the 6th grade marker.
Is that 2 out of place? The middle school 2 under Essex Elementary? Should that just be over?
Yeah, I'm sorry, it should be here. Yes, it should be under middle school. And it was, on your version, it's probably shaded.
Right.
So that would be the distribution of the siblings that I'm recommending.
And to clarify, that third, I see that we have a placeholder for the third classroom at Memorial.
And that goes to why we haven't been placing them at the elementary, is because we've been reducing staff at the elementary, and it didn't make sense to be adding students
Right.
while reducing staff. We did add students at the elementary right after we restarted school choice after COVID.
But so
So the blue.
where that classroom is, has that been determined, or is that?
No.
I'm wondering if people who are watching this are panicking, thinking, oh, that's not what I was expecting. Is this set in stone, or is this a?
So in my note, on the top sheet, it states that
Oh, yeah.
3rd grade is one of the grade levels that will have 3 classrooms. We are going to determine where the second, third, for the second 3 section grade level will be, likely in July. On its face, by the numbers, we would go with 5th grade at this point in time. I think they're at about 118% over the benchmark. But 2nd grade isn't too far behind because they have a lower cap at 20. So I think where we landed this year was making a very early decision about where to put the 3rd section, and then getting additional resident move-ins and wishing we had a do-over, and having the year already be underway. So what the plan is we're posting for a general elementary classroom teacher, with the knowledge that we will reorganize our existing staff to fit this pattern, and the person that we're hiring will go to either upper or lower depending on what the needs are. So
Right.
we would love to lock it in now, but I think there's a caution to make a premature decision and end up with a bigger problem at the early elementary.
Thanks.
So, I'm a little concerned, we're actually putting students at Memorial. Particularly given the feedback that we're getting about class size at Memorial. And when kindergarten at Essex is substantively lower than Memorial, at least according to the numbers here. And Essex is just a little bit lower than Memorial for 4th grade. Why not put them in Essex? I'm concerned about exacerbating the problem. I know it's only 2 students, but
Yep.
They're siblings.
Yeah. So not only do we not
What-
provide transportation, but now we're not providing transportation to a family that needs to do.
what about asking the family to go to Essex?
Because then the siblings would have to also go to
Transfer.
Essex.
Yeah.
If they've been in the school for years, it's not fair to them.
But we have a class size problem, right?
I don't believe we have a class size problem with the exception of 5th grade.
Sorry, Kate.
I said, I don't believe that we have a class size problem at Memorial with the exception of the 5th grade.
Yeah, I mean, hopefully not. I think that every year the question becomes who lives here in the summer. So a couple of these classes could turn into a class size problem if you get 3 new students in 2nd. You know, so. But I don't think it would be, I agree with John to ask students who've already, been at Memorial for a couple of years, or at Essex for a couple of years for that matter, to switch schools is treating our school choice students really differently than we're treating our resident students. And I think our philosophy has been trying to give them the same.
I totally understand that. I would like to try to avoid as much as possible having the same conversation next year because we're right on the edge of numbers.
Sure.
I don't see us adding kids to the to the grades that were on the edge of numbers, so.
So.
There's one kindergartner, it's like the lowest class, average class size in the school, 18. We're talking about 2 kids total, doesn't fit the scales.
Pam, a separate clarifying question.
Yeah, we could absorb 5 to 6 more students at 4th grade and still be in the benchmark.
Sorry, you wanna,
No, that was my clarifying.
are there any siblings at the 9th grade level?
No,
So the presented plan includes all of the
it
siblings.
just admits all of the siblings and is showing where they are. The 2 is supposed to be under middle school for 8th grade.
How many departing students are you expecting, assuming that the request to go to private school form is already filled out? Do you know, especially 8th grade? Or 9th grade, going to 9th grade?
We usually joke from about 15 to 20%, but it could be as high as an additional 10%.
And they don't have to inform us by a certain date.
I know, but based on what we know.
Right.
I'm asking.
Can you remind us, or maybe it's on here and I'm just missing it? How many, what is the total of 9th grade? So there's 97 students currently in 9th grade? That's this year's 9th grade class? Or
That's this year's 8th grade class.
this year's 8th grade class, okay. And how many school choice students are among them?
11.
11. Thank you, she's finding me the right lines. This isn't a clarifying question. I have a comment. Do you want me to hold comments?
Why don't we, have a motion on the table and then we can. Does anybody have a motion to make? I'll move to accept the recommended school choice, placements for the fiscal, school year 25-26.
Second.
Any discussion? Okay.
So I'm torn on this. The numbers are small, they're siblings, you know, I hear all the reasons for it. My concern is, I don't mean to be the downer here, Pam, but fiscal 27 is gonna be even more of a challenge than we just had fiscal 26. And, you know, we said we would wait on this a month ago because of the uncertainty of the budget. We have just as much uncertainty for FY 27. I know it doesn't feel at this moment because the budget just passed, but we are essentially in a equivalent or even tighter situation this year. So I'm a little concerned about that. And I would apply our same logic of waiting based on that.
I see that. I also see like a class at Essex with 13 students in it. And to me, that seems
But we're not,
unacceptably low.
but we're not putting any
Right.
school choice in there.
We're having a discussion. I wish that I was actually just going through my paperwork, Jake, to see if I had the enrollment study with us, because there was really helpful information in there, including forget what they called the number, but it was essentially a number that reflected how many students on average we gained or lost in a grade historically over time. And if the number was over 1, it was a grade that we typically gain students in, and less than 1. And so 9th grade was the only one that was less than 1. But the ones that were above 1 were like 1.0.
Yeah, we're essentially projected to be flat.
Right. And so,
So we're basically saying the projection is that the numbers are gonna be sort of like this, kind of right on the edge of, 2 to 3 in Memorial. Right,
This to me is as flat as it gets. Like, this is like nothing. We're talking about 2 at Memorial and 2 at Essex Elementary. I don't understand how that creates additional pressure for next year's budget.
Are you saying
I-
for the entire school choice, the 12 people, not just 2?
that's what I'm saying, yeah. to me, it's more the aid in middle school, right? If we have to be in the same situation where we end up reducing either the middle or high school staff by another one FTE, it's those 8 that could tip numbers a couple years from now.
Although now with the alignment of middle school and high school schedule, potentially that could create efficiency, right, when it comes to the teacher scheduling.
Potentially, yeah.
So, maybe it might be too early, but I get what you're saying, that once you enroll them, you have to wait for them to roll out.
I understand what Jake's saying, but like intuitively, I feel the opposite, which is because I'm not focusing as much on what the budgetary pressures might be, but just looking at the class sizes and in particular in high school, I think there is an added value. I mean, right now, the incoming freshman class will have just under 100 students. I think that's suboptimal. I think we can do more, offer more classes, offer wider perspectives. In so many ways, I'd like to see more. I would love to be able to admit more freshmen. But I'm cognizant of the fact that we have kind of roughly had a concept of around 10%. I'm not necessarily wedded to that, and yet I do understand where it comes from. But again, this is without considering this whole second level of how much do we worry about and plan for the what ifs of the future versus pursuing what we think is the right strategy at the moment.
As am I.
Did we have applicants for first grade?
Yep, we had over 200 applicants. We have applicants at every grade. And I think my original had 8 at kindergarten. I think for this group, the proposition is, if you don't feel like we need the revenue, then we shouldn't go forward with school choice. If you feel like we need the revenue,
We always need the revenue.
we go forward with school choice, and then it's kind of on me to figure out where are they best placed, given the overall makeup of each of the classes, right? Because there may be a grade level where the numbers look really small, but the characteristics of the class make it actually have a large staff influx just to support the kids that are there. So, and we don't get into conversations about individual families. And so I think the conversation is, do you want to go forward with school choice? Is the number 12, is the number 20, is the number 30? What's the figure you're trying to hit? And then I'm going to need to work with the principals on where we would put them. I'm thinking 12, I'm recommending 12 in the siblings because I think it's consistent in trying to maintain the school choice family relationship. It allows us to bring in students who are aware of the program and what the expectations are. So it probably means a higher level of success. And it allows us to keep moving forward without, inundating any one grade. I could go up a couple in 9th grade if you're looking to round up to 75.
So
Go ahead.
I don't think it's about the revenue to tell you the truth, because it's, right now, the 12 people is only 60,000. So I think what people are debating on is the long-term effect of this school choice decision that we're gonna make tonight. If the gain is only 60,000, in my mind, what's the harm in waiting? Because there are so many things in place. Potentially, we want to see how it all works out. The middle school, high school alignment, for example.
Mhm.
And then there are many other things that you are putting in place. And with additional budgetary, next year, challenges that we might have, why add on additional things, when the benefit of it is not that material?
Well, because if you wait, then now these parents who have been on the list, they have to make decisions for next year.
Sure.
And so they have their siblings, and now you have to go to another school for a year while you're waiting. I mean, that's the issue.
Right,
Well,
so
and it's
yes,
not-
it will impact the families of these 12 students for sure. But I think you gotta think about the long term, how it will impact the district, next year and the year after.
But at the same time, if we're looking at how it impacts the district year over year, then it's not just $60,000, right? Because 60, and then it's 120, and then it's 180, and then it's 240, right? If we're talking about especially taking students in kindergarten, that's 13 years.
Sure. On the revenue side, every year is immaterial compared to the potential expenses that we're trying to figure out. I think that's what we're talking about is the budgetary challenges in the future years. Keep in mind that based on the projection that we have, the next 10 years, we're going from $32 million to $40 million. We're gonna have $8 million to $10 million increase. So it's great that we have overrides this year and that the community is all coming together. But there is a lot of work to be done over the next few years, or even just next year, how we're gonna pass the next one. And there's a lot of planning that we need to do. So personally, I would minimize and simplify, the different factors and changes and just trying to get a status quo for now till you figure out exactly what you're planning to do next year or the year after.
I'm just confused because months ago, we were talking about the possibility of increasing school choice to add additional revenue. And we were okay with bringing on 20 students from school choice. And now we're debating 12 that are all siblings. So like
We weren't okay with it. That's why we put it on hold.
No, we put it on hold because we weren't sure if the budget was going to
Right.
pass.
Exactly.
But from my understanding, the budget that we voted on assumed, 20 or so school choice.
It assumed none.
That was the revenue was $100,000, was it not?
Yeah,
Attributable to that?
Pam recommended that we put that out and
Yeah.
we used reserve.
We held on it, so we
But my
reduced it.
point is, it was always in the discussion.
It was.
It is,
Yeah.
and I guess,
And it was $100,000 that would otherwise remain, could be in our reserves and growing over time, right? It's an investment.
And we're only talking about a one-year thing, right? These students may apply again next year.
No, you don't apply it. Well,
Yeah, they put in an application.
no, I'm saying if they're accepted. If we take them,
Then they're in, right?
yes.
But if we wait, then they can, there's an opportunity again next year, right? It's not like
Maybe, or maybe these families say, okay, I'm going to go to
They
a
might.
different district and I'm gonna take my kid
we
who's
should
already
pull
here.
out and stop. I don't think the conversation's about the families, unfortunately. I think it's about the impact or the positive or negative impact of $60,000 and a commitment to 12 students over 6th grade levels. So if you have them or don't have them, we're not making any staffing pros or adjustments based on the way they're distributed. Right? It wouldn't impact a change there. It will, we don't have it in the budget now. It would reduce our revenue intake this year by $60,000. We increased our reserve use by $100,000 at the last minute when the 100K came out. That's my concern right there. That's why I'm advocating for it, because we're going to need to do something to offset that reserve usage next year.
I'm comfortable with Pam's recommendation and I would be comfortable adding a few at 9th grade level, one just small additional revenue, but really for me, it's not a revenue decision. It's just that if there's 86 now, there's, in all likelihood, 70 something by next year. I think we should be, I think ideally it's higher. But I know, Pam, I know that's your decision where to place them, but that would be what makes sense to me.
I agree. I am inclined to accept Pam's recommendation. I would prefer to have 20 students, but I can see the reasoning behind holding for next year.
I do appreciate that it's 12, right? That feels like a comfortable compromise. I would take it as is. I wouldn't add more, because once we add more, then we have to figure out, because right now there's kind of a logic to it in terms of, families already being engaged with the district. As soon as we open it further, then you change that.
All right, so we have a motion already on the table to accept Pam's recommended school choice of 12 students for the fall of 2025, which does represent all the siblings from the school choice lottery. Why don't we vote on that? All in favor? It's unanimous. Great.
Thank you. People will be relieved with both ways, just to know what the,
Right, and we thank our school choice family for their patience as we work through this. Do we,
the thing we have left is schedule. Right, end of year schedule. And we don't, I sent a draft copy of next year's calendar. If people just want, we don't have to talk in detail about it tonight, if people want to look through it. It restarts our regular meeting times. I have to fix the first one. It shouldn't be Wednesday. I think this is why I need everybody to look at it. Basically, it should restart our calendar the third Tuesday in August. The fourth Tuesdays all next year will be school building committee meetings. So this is just a rough sketch based on past years. On my rotating calendar, we would be back to principal, like the school spotlight presentations for the year. We've also got special education review on the list for next year. So the spotlights aren't placed yet in the calendar. We can look at that again. But I would just say, take a look at it and see kind of what comes to mind, and we can work through any of the scheduling details or the programming details in our summer session. But in terms of first and third Tuesdays, and then all of our subcommittee meetings, we just tried to sketch it out for the year so people could get a sense of it. Now, in my notes, I had asked you a question about the January setup. Because we haven't had building committee meetings over the past few years, meeting on the regular, we've had a lot of flexibility. And we have used two different models for January, one that keeps us true to the first and third Tuesdays. What works well is that we stick to our schedule. What seems to happen is that meeting right after the winter break seems to not have a lot of substance in it because nothing has changed budgetarily while everybody has been on holiday. So what this one does is it goes back to an older model that we used where we would skip that and move to the second Tuesday after we return, and then double up a couple of meetings going into February. So this one proposes January 13, 27, and then either February 3rd or 10th, or both if necessary, to do all of the winter budget work. What I wasn't sure about is whether or not we wanted to extend into March now that we've had a push out of the town meetings. You know, town meeting used to be the first town meeting used to be the first Monday in April, so we were under the gun to get the budget finalized by that first week in February, with the second week in February really being pushing the timeline. We could push out to March 3rd, which may change our thinking about how we want to organize February, whether we want two meetings or one meeting around the 3rd and the 10th. So that's just there for discussion and feedback. Big picture question, how do you want to organize January, February budget season?
So can I expand that?
Mhm.
I think we have to look beyond January, February for budget. We've got a lot of collaborative work that needs to be done. I don't want to end up in the same situation we were in this year, right up to the last moment.
Yeah.
And I know we've all expressed frustration with how the process has worked over the past 5 years and trying to get out of that. I think in terms of just straight up dates and stuff, this all works.
Okay.
I think what I'm asking is like, how do we rethink kind of the budget process? I don't know how that shows up on the calendar as topics, but how do we rethink? And this may not be the time to have the conversation, maybe next time is or whatever, but how do we rethink that? Particularly if we can continue the collaborative work with the number crunching group that we've got. And even think about doing that before we close out this year so that we're in a good place early next year.
Thoughts?
this has nothing to do with me, but I would recommend that once the new, school committee people are in place, you guys will be voting the subcommittees. I would recommend that you guys clarify exactly what you want to task the finance subcommittee at least. I don't know about the other ones, but I do think that the finance subcommittee, given the authority and exactly, the clarity about what kind of tasks they need to accomplish within themselves or, with other stakeholders, they can get a lot of stuff done, even during the summer, or before January. I would task more to the finance subcommittee to get things done. For clarity.
Are these all details that can be ironed out down the road, or are you looking for us to
I
create a
think,
more specific plan?
I don't know how specific we need to get, other than to say we do or do not commit to a collaborative meeting before we close in June, which is like we have a couple weeks here, right, a month? I think that we need to decide. I don't know if we need to decide it tonight, but we need to decide it very soon to get that going.
I think we should probably wait until we reorg. Right, so we're gonna have 2 new members coming on.
Yeah, if we wait, my only concern is waiting till June 3rd, we then have only one meeting after that. And it's at the very end of the school year, it's maybe hard to schedule people.
So we could schedule it, but we just don't know which, who's going to be attending it until after we reorg, right?
Right, but let's assume that the same people are attending
Mhm.
just for scheduling purposes, and then if it has to change, it changes.
Mhm.
So if we're comfortable doing that, then I would encourage us to move forward with scheduling a collaborative number crunching meeting. And
Assuming the schedule will work for other people too.
yeah, that's why we need the time,
Yeah.
right? Sometime before mid-June.
Is there suggestions on what that agenda would be?
We'll need to talk that through a little bit, but fundamentally looking ahead to next year's process. Maybe that's where we lay out more detailed process.
I would say one of the agenda is to align the calendars already, because we have our draft calendar, they must have theirs too, align everything together. That would be the first step.
Are you thinking about the calendar of the additional work, not the formal?
Well, it's got to interface with our formal meetings, but yes. I mean, functionally, if we are, FY 27, we do not have the reserves that we had FY 26. Right, so we know we've got a significant chunk to make up there. And we've also been talking about doing a correction, right, that gets us 5 years out. So, that is significant work that the towns have to have time to play out and get behind, and or not. So I think working that out before we leave in June gives us a sense of if and how much has to be done over the summer, and a sense of timeline leading up to February and March.
Who's typically in charge of doing the outreach to schedule those? Is that you, Pam?
Pam has been to date.
We could just put a feeler out to see.
It'll help if I can give them a sense of what we're going in there to do. Are all the other boards reorganized as well? Because they all have, well, Essex has done its election, but they're just doing their election
Today.
right now. There could be board movements, so I don't know how much time they'll need, but I can
Right.
find out.
Let me see if that timing works for them for this meeting.
So this is the conversation about the external work that gets done to facilitate common ground between all of the parties, not so much the benchmarks that we have to hit and the dates that we have to hit.
Yeah, those dates are set by the agreement and whatnot, so. I don't think that's the issue. I think the issue is the groundwork that needs to be done to get there.
Other thoughts or?
So, just a couple other items, I think would be good to think about adding to the list here. You have on here the NEAS report.
Yep.
But we should also ask add the DESI report.
So we're working on the end of year kind of analysis of our district improvement plan. We don't have any indication what we're getting,
Right,
even a
but-
preview copy.
We don't think it's gonna be till the summer, so we should do
Yep,
it early
it'll
next year. Right?
Yep.
Yeah.
I hope. We have it this summer.
Some light summer reading.
So the other things that have come up during our budget work this year for FY '26 that we at least put on the table is talking about. One is, can we have a conversation about what a quote unquote right size program is or should be? And maybe we have it already, but at least having the conversation. The other that we've talked about a number of times are, what are our metrics of excellence? If it's not MCAS, what is it? And what does that mean for student outcomes and parts of the graduate and so on? And then the other one that has come up a number of times in the conversation is the math performance, and particularly the call out of the math inequity at middle school. Again, we may have all of the right things in place, but having a conversation, ideally, I'd like to have that one before the end of the year, but I don't know if we're gonna get there.
It's addressed in the end of year plan.
I know, but when we put it in a big plan, it gets one bullet and, one question. We don't actually have a substantive conversation about things. So I would like to have an actual conversation about it.
Okay.
And then the last thing, which does not impact schedule, I think, but I just wanted to add it to the list to be comprehensive, is, continuing to work on the budget. The holistic view of the budget, which I know Michelle has committed to and will take time to get there, but that's not an agenda item per se, but it's a continue to work just so that we're all kind of staying in the same place there.
Right. School committee comment?
This is my last chance to make it right. This is my last meeting.
It is.
I don't think I've ever made a school committee comment, so I'll leave here without doing it. Okay, so it's here, so sad. It was often said that when Jake and Anna and I joined, we were a lot. We asked a lot of questions, and I think at times I felt like I may have derailed meetings by asking so many questions, but honestly, I hope that future members continue to ask questions. And I hope that it's understood that questions don't constitute criticism. Sometimes they show a different side to an issue that needs to be seen. And they're one of the ways that we ensure that level services doesn't just become about the status quo. So be patient with your new members. And along the same lines, as much as I think we all value consensus, don't be afraid to disagree. Remember, everyone brings something unique and unique perspective, and that the public often wants to see that we are not always in lockstep. I think it's important to know that. And I continue to believe, probably an occupational hazard, that sometimes the best results come from zealous advocacy from multiple perspectives. The other thing I think is really important, and I don't know exactly how you do this, but I think it's worth considering. What's being asked of us and now you is a lot. There is a lot on all of our plates. There has been a lot on my plate for 3 years, and I know all of you have sacrificed a lot of things to be here, but I think there's big picture issues, and Jake just touched on some of them, but we, at different times, we've also talked about, should we look at the regional agreement? Should we look at wider regionalization? Should we consider how the future of AI may impact how we deliver an educational program? These are huge issues. I don't know, with the amount of work y'all have on your plates, how you possibly get around to tackling those big picture issues, because you're doing a lot just to get through, the voucher requests. So I think it's worth considering how you can leverage the resources in this community to better support you. because I think there's a lot of people who are willing to engage and you don't have to, sacrifice your responsibilities as a member of this committee, but can still learn from and get just leverage, I guess is the best way I can say it. So I just would ask you to consider that because I think it's in some ways a missed opportunity and would allow you all to accomplish more. On a personal note, in the very unlikely chance that any of my children are listening, I want to just share that I recognize that high school is not the easiest time to have your parent be a public figure within the high school. So I appreciate that my kids have done their part to support me. They've held signs and showed up sweating from lacrosse games to vote, and have tolerated me on the podium at graduation, many things that I'm sure they didn't always want to do. And I think it is the right time for me to step away from that, even though two of them have now made their way off. And I hope that the one thing that if they take anything from this experience, it's knowing that the value of community and knowing that you need to fight for the things you believe in. So boys, if you're listening, maybe. And finally, I'm done. I'm almost done. Want to thank all of you who sat here and who will continue to sit here for hopefully many more years. This is a true public service. And whether I agree or disagree with some of the decisions you make in the future, I will always be the first to remind everyone that the time and dedication and good intentions that I've consistently seen on this committee. So I feel grateful to have served with all of you.
Thank you.
All set.
Thank you both for your
First and
service. I've learned a lot from spending time with both of you and from debating and agreeing and disagreeing and coming around together. And I'm glad that you guys get to wrap up your service on what feels like a high note. It's exciting to look ahead for our district and hopefully you're leaving it in good hands.
I would just add on to what you were saying. I do think the past 3 years, I've seen the transformation of this committee. In the beginning, it was hard to, we were a lot, I was a lot, but I think that it was hard to accept the different opinions in the very beginning. I do see this evolving, that now people are more open-minded and with less judgment. So I do agree, I echo what Erica is saying, that, just be open-minded to your new voices, new members, new ideas is only going to help the committee to function better as a whole. What I would recommend, what I want to say is another thing that is great to see over the past 3 years, especially this year, is to see the community coming together. I do think that there is a difficult road ahead, but I do think that there is light at the end of the tunnel, more so than 3 years ago, I feel like. What I would recommend other than utilizing the community resources, I really truly think that we need to utilize subcommittees. Right now, a lot of subcommittees are really just operating as a review function. There is not a lot of things that the subcommittee are tasked to do. And I do think that with the interest of time, having the resources even internally to do a lot of different things, it will help us to push things quicker, push things through a little bit quicker. Another recommendation I have, lastly, is I think we're doing great with the external communication. We're starting to. What I'll recommend is your internal communication. What I've seen the past few months, especially, is when it comes to specific decisions that the principal and superintendent push forward and recommended, which we agree. But I think the teachers that will come to the school committee to kind of ask to veto it. So that just shows me that the communication within on the decision that you guys make, you might want to get more buy-in internally first. It would just make the whole process a lot smoother. But it has been a pleasure.
So I want to thank you
Enjoy
both.
your Tuesday nights.
I know, it's exciting.
I want to thank you both, as coming on all together and figuring it out together. Your patience and your willingness to listen was very important, and to ask questions. And, to echo that, I very much value the perspectives you both brought. So thank you. So before we close, I do have one more scheduling thing. You went very quickly to
I do too.
public comment, so I need to come back to one other thing, but this may not be the right
Sorry,
time.
I closed that portion of the meeting. Go ahead.
So, I do want to get on our agenda before the end of June, and I don't know if I need to make a motion to do this or not. But we have to talk about the superintendent contract and or search. What we know so far is you came into this year planning for a search or expecting a search. That may not be the case, and that's fine if not, but we have to have a conversation about it.
Yeah.
Because even if it's not, we have to do evaluation and whatnot. So we have to get that on our agenda. I don't see it anywhere on the next couple of meetings, so.
That ties to my open question, which is, I only have us down for the June 3rd meeting, and then we need another meeting date.
Right.
So,
But one of those has to include this conversation because we've already extended the contract twice. And I don't know where that puts us contract wise, but, or search wise, we want to be ready for it next year, early next year if we're going into that situation. So we have to have it.
So can we look at the calendar? We said June 3rd. And then we said we could not do the 17th because of 8th grade graduation.
Yep.
Are people still around on the 24th? Is that too late?
and that would be a morning, noon, or afternoon meeting ahead of the building committee. So what I gave some considerations was we could do earlier in the day on the 17th. And it could be remote if necessary. We could move the meeting to June 10th at the regular time. We could shift to a morning, noon, or afternoon meeting on June 24th. This could also be a workshop day potentially. We just have Essex SBC at 6 that night. And then the fallback is move business to summer session. The other thing we're trying to schedule, and when Anna was talking about coming on the committee, it jogged my memory that we are owed an auditor's report. Our auditor has, so we were Powers and Sullivan, they were taken over by Markham, and then Markham was taken over by,
CBiz.
and CBiz is not having
Overwhelmed.
a very good biz.
Yes, not a good biz right now.
Song.
So we are, along with several other communities and regional districts, waiting for our audit documents, which we had it done early this year in terms of submission, but so that needs to be scheduled into either the summer or this late June meeting. So that's just something to keep in mind, but
When are they gonna have a draft? Did it tell you?
I have a draft. They're reviewing it. They're debating whether or not they need to restate a receivable on it. It's not an easy process anymore. They're a ginormous company, no longer their personalized service.
Are we gonna
Are
switch?
we looking
so we
for,
probably need to look.
We
for
will be
another
switching
auditor.
next year.
So it came full circle round.
Yes.
so looking at this meeting, I would prefer to get it done on the earlier side. I would lean towards the 10th and
I'm comfortable with that.
I'm around the 10th and not the next 2 weeks I'm out of town, so.
I can do the 10th.
just the regular time.
Yep, I'll just send out something to make sure everybody who's not here can be here, because we wouldn't have
Chris?
a quorum in the 2 new members
And Teresa.
and Teresa.
All right. Any more comments?
Can I just follow up? Do I need to make a motion for the superintendent contract and search, or can I be assured that will be on June 3rd?
That's, I don't set that aspect of the agenda. I would need to have a conversation with Chris.
That needs to go, yeah,
Chris and
goes
Kate.
to Chris.
I've already asked you and Chris to have it on this meetings, but
So we actually don't, as a body, need to vote on Pam's contract. Chris and I will sit down with Anne and decide on whatever the process is going to be, and then bring that to the committee to have the big conversation. in
so
public.
can we do that for June 3rd?
I don't know, because I haven't had that conversation with Chris yet. I would say that it is likely to be I'm not gonna commit versus time.
All I'm saying is that we have to do it by June, but by the time we close. Otherwise we are without a contract, right?
No,
No.
we're committed through next June. The 20.
Right, but
June
don't we have
20th.
commit, don't we, anyway, you all have
Yes.
that conversation, let's get it on the calendar.
And question is 2027 and whether or not we're gonna extend through that or whether or not we're gonna.
And what does the evaluation process look like?
Right, well, that we have, yes.
That's all, my piece is already in process to get to you guys. That has been traditionally kicked to the summer,
Mhm.
but if you want it, I can try to get it to you faster. I mean, we are fairly tight at this point.
I will take a motion to adjourn.
Yay,
So
second,
Yeah,
All
you
in
can
favor?
second.
Aye. Yay, thank you guys.
Thank you.